Prayer isn't spiritual performance. It's a bioelectric transmission, a frequency your body generates and the universe is built to receive. You already know this. You've felt it in moments of stillness, in that hum behind silence, in the pull towards something you can't quite name. A Soviet scientist put instruments to that feeling and captured it on film. The KGB didn't just silence him, they erased him. The recording survived. The man who made it was made to vanish. There is a pattern running underneath civilization. It runs beneath every empire that rose and fell, beneath every sacred text that got locked in a vault, beneath every scientist whose name got quietly removed from the record. Once you see it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. And I want you to understand something before we go any further. This isn't a story that starts in the 20th century. This pattern is ancient. The knowledge of the human energy field doesn't begin with Soviet instruments and Cold War laboratories. It begins in the oldest healing traditions on Earth. It runs through Vedic medicine, through Taoist practice, through the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece. Every one of those traditions encoded the same discovery in different language. Prana, chi, the aura, the luminous body. They weren't speaking in metaphor, they were speaking in mechanism. What the Soviet state did, and this is the part that should stop you cold, is fund a research program that confirmed what mystics had been documenting for millennia. The instruments worked, the data was real, and then the state that paid for the discovery decided the discovery was more dangerous than useful. That decision tells you everything about what the data actually showed. Stay with me through this entire video. I need you here for what's coming. Because deep in this video, and I mean deep, past the history, past the science, past the documented suppression, I'm going to show you the actual mechanism of erasure. Not just what they deleted, how they deleted it, and why the method itself is the most important piece of information you'll encounter today. The erasure protocol changes everything. It changes how you understand institutions. It changes how you understand your own access to this knowledge. It changes what you do next. There's a reason you found this. There's a reason you're still here. The age of hidden knowledge is ending, but only for the ones who stay long enough to see the whole pattern. This is one of those moments. Don't move. Let's name the layer we're standing on right now. The human body generates a field, not metaphorically, not spiritually in the way that word gets dismissed. Electrically, biologically, measurably. Every living cell in your body is a tiny electrical generator. Your heart produces the strongest electromagnetic field of any organ, a field that extends several feet beyond your skin in every direction. Your brain pulses with rhythmic electrical activity that changes frequency depending on your state of consciousness. This isn't fringe science. This is basic bioelectromagnetism, taught in medical schools, used in hospitals every single day. The EKG, reading your heart. The EEG, mapping your brain. These are instruments designed to detect and record the electrical field your body is continuously broadcasting. So here is the question that should have been asked long ago, and here is the answer that keeps getting buried. If the body generates a measurable electromagnetic field, what happens at the edges of that field? What does it look like? What information does it carry? Semyon Kirlian answered that question with a piece of photographic film and a high-frequency electrical current. Kirlian was a Soviet-Armenian inventor and electrician. In 1939, he made an accidental discovery that would consume the rest of his life and eventually draw the attention of the Soviet state. While repairing equipment in a research laboratory, he noticed a small flash of light between an electrode and a patient's skin. He became obsessed with capturing that light on film. Working with his wife Valentina, he developed a photographic technique that passed high-frequency electrical current through a living subject placed directly on a photographic plate. What appeared on that film was extraordinary. A luminous, corona-like emanation surrounding the edges of living tissue. Glowing, dynamic, shifting. Different in living organisms than in non-living matter. Different in healthy tissue than in diseased tissue. Different in a person who was calm than in a person under stress. This is what became known as Kirlian photography, and the Soviet Academy of Sciences took notice. Now, here is where the decode move becomes essential. Kirlian photography isn't mysticism, it's corona discharge imaging, a well-documented electrical phenomenon. When a conductive object is placed in a high-frequency electromagnetic field, the ambient moisture, gases, and electrical properties of that object produce a visible discharge pattern. In non-living matter, this pattern is relatively uniform and predictable. In living tissue, it is dynamic, variable, and responsive to biological state. That variability is the signal. That responsiveness is the data. And here is the civilizational weight of that data. Every major healing tradition on Earth had already been working with this layer for thousands of years. The Vedic concept of prana, the vital life force that flows through the body along channels called nadis, maps almost precisely onto the patterns Kirlian's photographs revealed. The meridian system in traditional Chinese medicine, the invisible channels through which qi flows and through which acupuncture needles are placed, corresponds to regions of measurable bioelectric activity that modern researchers have since confirmed with galvanic skin response instruments. The aura, described in Hindu, Buddhist, Zoroastrian, and early Christian iconography as a luminous field surrounding the body, depicted in sacred art across cultures that had no contact with each other, that is not coincidence. That is documentation. Different languages, different centuries, different continents, all recording the same observable phenomenon. Manly P. Hall wrote extensively about the luminous body across mystery school traditions. He documented how initiates in the ancient world were trained specifically to perceive and work with this field, not as a supernatural gift, but as a developed sensory capacity. What Kirlian did in 1939 is give that ancient technology a modern instrument. He didn't discover the field. He photographed what every tradition had already mapped. And when the Soviet state saw his photographs, they did something remarkable. They funded him for decades. A state that officially rejected mysticism, that suppressed religion, that operated under strict materialist ideology. That state poured resources into a research program built around capturing images of the human energy field. Because the data was undeniable. Because the instrument worked. Because whatever the field was, it was real, it was measurable, and it had implications they were not yet willing to make public. Soviet researchers began exploring whether the Kirlian field could be used diagnostically, whether changes in the corona discharge pattern could predict illness before symptoms appeared, whether the field responded to states of consciousness in ways that could be measured, replicated, and eventually manipulated. The research expanded, the implications deepened, and then something shifted. The funding changed, the researchers were reassigned, the publications stopped, the names disappeared from the record. But the deeper experiment, the one that went far beyond photographing fingertips, that experiment is what the state actually feared. Because what they found in that deeper layer wasn't just a field around the body, it was a field that connected bodies to each other, and to something far larger than any individual organism. And that is the piece they worked hardest to erase. Here is the layer that most people never reach. Governments suppress things for many reasons: money, power, territory. But when a state suppresses its own scientific data, collected by its own funded researchers, inside its own institutions, something else is happening. That is not policy. That is panic. The KGB did not classify parapsychology research under the category of enemy intelligence. They classified it under ideological threat. Think about what that means for a moment. Ideological threat, not military, not economic, ideological. The research wasn't dangerous because a foreign power could weaponize it. It was dangerous because it contradicted the story the Soviet state was built on. That story was strict materialist determinism. Matter is all there is. Consciousness is a byproduct of biology. The state is the highest organizing principle of human life. That was the religion, and like every religion, it could not survive a competing cosmology. So what happens when your own scientists start measuring something that doesn't fit the doctrine? You have two choices. You expand the doctrine, or you erase the data. They chose erasure. Akademgorodok was the brief exception. In the 1960s, the Soviet Union built an entire scientific city in Siberia, a closed academic community designed to accelerate innovation. For a few years, researchers there tasted something rare inside the USSR: genuine intellectual freedom. They were exploring systems theory, cybernetics, consciousness research, bioelectric phenomena. The work was extraordinary. The atmosphere was electric. And then the crackdown came, quietly, methodically. Funding redirected. Research topics reassigned. The window closed. What had briefly opened in Siberia was sealed shut from Moscow. Yuri Bezmenov confirmed the mechanism. Bezmenov was a KGB defector who spent years after his defection explaining Soviet psychological strategy to Western audiences. He was explicit. Perception control, he said, was the primary weapon. Not bombs, not spies. Perception. Because if you can control what a population believes is real, you control everything downstream: behavior, compliance, identity, resistance. The moment you allow your own citizens to believe that consciousness extends beyond the skull, that individuals carry a measurable energetic field that connects them to each other and to a larger system, you have introduced a competing center of authority. And competing centers of authority are existential threats to totalitarian systems. Here is the decode move. The Soviet state did not suppress this research because it was pseudoscience. If it were pseudoscience, they would have laughed at it publicly and moved on. States mock what they don't fear. They bury what they do. The KGB classified Semyon Kirlian's photographic work, classified the bioelectric field research coming out of multiple Soviet institutions, and funneled parallel studies into military applications programs that remained classified for decades. You do not militarize pseudoscience. You militarize things that work. Quantifying the soul, and that is essentially what the human energy field research was doing, threatened the materialist state religion at its foundation. Because if the body radiates a measurable field, if that field responds to intention and emotion and the proximity of other living systems, then the individual is not just a unit of labor. The individual is a node in a vast living network that no state can own, no ideology can fully contain, and no bureaucracy can administrate. That is not a scientific inconvenience. That is a civilizational challenge, and the Soviet state understood it as such. What you are looking at, when you trace this history, is not a story about Cold War paranoia. It is a story about what every centralized power structure fears most: the discovery that human beings are more than they have been told they are, that the boundaries of the self extend further than the skin, that there is something in you that cannot be fully measured, managed, or owned. They knew. That is what the classification record proves. They knew, and they chose suppression. But what they didn't account for, what no erasure protocol ever fully accounts for, is what survives. And the erasure they ran was more total than most people realize. This is the layer beneath the suppression. Because suppression, at its most basic, means keeping something quiet. What happened here was not suppression, it was erasure. And erasure is a different operation entirely. Names disappeared from institutional records. Labs were quietly defunded and then quietly dismantled. Research affiliations were severed, not announced, just removed, as if the connection had never existed. Colleagues who had collaborated for years suddenly found it professionally dangerous to acknowledge that collaboration. The social architecture of science, the citations, the correspondence, the shared credit was systematically unwound. You cannot simply destroy an idea, but you can destroy the network of people who carry it, and that is exactly what the apparatus did. Viktor Glushkov understood what was at stake better than almost anyone. Glushkov was a Soviet cyberneticist, a mathematician and systems theorist who saw, earlier than most, that information was the true substrate of reality. His work on human computer systems and the nature of biological information processing brought him into territory that made powerful people deeply uncomfortable. He survived 2 assassination attempts. 2, not one incident that could be written off as coincidence. 2 deliberate attempts to remove him from the equation. He survived. But the message was received by everyone watching. This is what happens when your data leads somewhere the state cannot follow. Notes were burned, not metaphorically, physically burned. Research documentation that had taken years to compile, gone. And the burning was not random destruction, it was targeted, specific files, specific findings. The data that pointed most directly toward a measurable, connected, non-material dimension of human life. So here is the question that this history demands. Why would a state with virtually unlimited internal power, a state that could simply reclassify, restrict access, lock the findings in a vault for 50 years, why would that state burn the notes? Why go to the additional, irreversible step of physical destruction? Because vaults can be opened, classification can be reversed. A future administration can decide to declassify, but ash cannot be unburned. They weren't just hiding the data. They were trying to make it so the data had never existed. That is not the behavior of an institution managing inconvenient information. That is the behavior of an institution that has been genuinely frightened. And here is the decode move that changes how you read this entire history. Erasure is itself the confession. When a state erases something, it leaves the shape of what it erased. The violence of the removal tells you exactly how significant the thing was. You do not burn ordinary files. You do not threaten colleagues into silence over marginal research. You do not run 2 assassination attempts on a mathematician whose work was merely theoretical. The scale and the totality of the erasure protocol is the most precise measurement we have of how dangerous this knowledge actually was. The Stasi, the East German secret police, arguably the most sophisticated surveillance apparatus in history, documented this principle operationally. They called it Zersetzung, the systematic decomposition of a target's life, not imprisonment. Not public accusation, quiet destruction. Severing relationships, undermining credibility, making a person's professional existence simply cease to function. The KGB ran a version of this on entire research fields. Not just individual scientists, entire disciplines. The goal was not to defeat the ideas in open debate. The goal was to make it so no one was left who could articulate them. That is what you are looking at, not Cold War bureaucracy, not ideological overcaution. A deliberate, coordinated, multi-decade effort to remove from human memory the evidence that we are something more than what the materialist framework can contain. And here is what matters most, right now, in this moment. What they could not burn was the pattern itself. The field doesn't live in the notes, it lives in the living system. And the most dangerous piece of what survived the erasure, the piece they could never reach, is closer to you than you think. You are not a bystander to this history. You are the evidence they couldn't erase. Your bioelectric field, the one Kirlian photographed, the one Soviet researchers measured and the state classified, that is not separate from you. That is you. A living, radiating, interconnected system that no institution has ever successfully quantified into submission, because the field doesn't submit, it just keeps transmitting. This is the sovereignty payoff. When you understand what was suppressed and why, you stop being a victim of circumstances you can't name. You start recognizing the shape of what was hidden, and you realize the hiding failed, because you are still here. Still radiating, still connected to something larger than any ideology ever managed to contain. The age of hidden knowledge is ending, and you are the proof of that. If something in this recovery landed for you, a detail, a connection, a moment where something clicked into place, put it in the comments. Your insights consistently add layers to this work that I couldn't have reached alone. This is a living inquiry, not a closed lecture. There is much more of this curriculum ahead. The geometry of living systems, the neurochemistry of expanded states, the symbols that were always maps back to this. The initiation continues. You are not separate from the field they tried to erase. You are an expression of it. See you at dawn. If something in this excavation landed for you, leave it in the comments. Your insight adds a layer, and if you want to continue this recovery, subscribe. The field was never destroyed, only hidden. We keep finding it together.